Hey, what's up guys? JB here. So I have been getting comments and questions about the upcoming Dream or Transcendence system as it's going to be known here on Global. And with that system now closing in on 4 months of uptime over in JP, I feel like I understand enough at this point on the general direction and approach that they've taken for awakening the older existing units that we have today. Now, first of all, the jump from level 120 up to 140 is not going to be as substantial as a jump as we saw from the level 99 to 120 EX change. Now, when you consider that the majority of units that you're going to be facing out on the battlefield, at least early on, are not going to be fully reincarnated, up to their max potential, we're not only going to be looking at smaller overall stat changes, but there's going to be less skill adjustments, with these Transcendence awakenings versus what we actually saw with the EX upgrades, where there was actually 3 total skill upgrades or changes that they received. Now, what this means is that, these changes in most cases aren't going to be fundamentally changing, how a unit plays or performs, but instead it's going to either, sort of double down on some innate strengths that the unit has, or maybe shore up certain weaknesses that they may carry today. So whoever was good before, they're most likely still going to be good and viable, after they're awakened. But, units who are bad today or maybe not all that usable, this awakening is probably not really going to save them, and, instead they're probably going to be waiting for a Mastery 3 update, or maybe they're just going to tear it up on your PvE team. What that also is going to feed into is that as we're sort of drip fed the awakenings for these older units, the general meta will likely be a bit more volatile in influx than we're used to. Some older units, they may have small pockets where they're going to be very strong, since not everyone is going to be able to roll out full level 140 teams right off the bat. So that means that your level 120 units, they're still going to very much be in play and usable, at least for a while, until the general player base hits a critical mass where people have awakened and pulled more level 140 eligible units. Now lastly, these older legacy units, as I call them, I think in most cases, you're going to want to awaken someone that can sort of go alongside that newest, sort of latest unit that you've pulled, either in a mono element or maybe even in a job setup. And then those 2 units would sort of form the core of a team that you have in the early goings of this level 140 era. And then in some cases, maybe it's actually a couple of older units that you awaken to go alongside that newest unit. And in the early goings, I think that's probably going to be the best approach for most people out there. And that will very much mirror, what we saw with the previous EX system. Although the general pace of the awakenings this time around is going to be quite a bit faster. Now, in terms of how you should actually allocate the scroll and antler resources that are used to awaken your units, and how deep you actually go with reincarnating the units to max out their stats over time, well, that's ultimately going to vary from account to account. There's not really any one-size-fits-all answer there. What I will say is that there very much will be diminishing returns, when it comes to how many times you reincarnate a singular unit, versus maybe taking more of a horizontal approach and spreading out those awakening resources over many different units. In my opinion, people who are free to play or maybe who don't spend too often on the game, you're going to need to be very selective about the units that you take and awaken multiple times. But not only that, who you actually awaken, period. Just because, as we've seen in JP, the amount of awakening resources that they've had, have actually been kind of a slow drip similar to Blossoms in the past. Of course, all of this is with the assumption that the Transcendence comes to Global, unchanged from how it was on the Japanese side. I do actually hope that Gumi does change it for us a bit and sort of loosens up the reins there. I do think that they really need to. Either way though, I think that selectiveness is going to be key, at least here in the early days. So that is really the thought behind today's video, and what I've done is I've actually gone through all of the units that have gotten awakened over in Japan, over these first 4 months of the system. And today I'm going to be giving you my take on a small handful of units per element that I believe have received a favorable upgrade when it comes to this Transcendence system. And I'm going to be splitting this series into 2 parts just to kind of keep it succinct and to the point. So we're going to be covering 4 elements today: ice, water, earth, and light. So with that said, guys, let's just jump right into it. Now, before I talk about the individual units here, let's just talk quickly about how I've structured this. The top area is going to be incoming. These are the latest units for the element over on the GP side, things that we're going to be expecting to see over the next several months. And at least from a mono element perspective, those would be the units that you'd be building a team around, with the older legacy units that we're going to be focusing on today. Now, I really won't be talking too much about these newer units, that's not really what the core of today's video is about, but I did sort of put them here as sort of a guideline or a reference, and you will notice that I will have an ETA or estimated time that these units will be appearing on global there as well. So that will lead into the second area there, which is going to be for those legacy units. That is going to be the bread and butter of the conversation today and sort of what we're going to be focusing on the most. Now, finally, I do have a third category, and that is for low cost, and that is going to be reserved for units who are 70 cost or lower. So those are going to be lower cost units that's got nice upgrades and really can be difference makers for you in those cost restricted game modes like Limited Guild War or Class Match. Now, while cost 70s are UR tier, units of MR rarity or lower, there are going to be less resource intensive for you to awakening compared to their UR brethren, since this system does actually start off with scrolls and antlers of different rarities right from the start. So awakening some lower cost units is going to be accessible to everyone, I think, over time, and I think is one improvement, with this system compared to the Blossom and Fragment awakening systems that, as they were introduced on their release. So kicking it off here today with the Ice element, as far as units here to watch out for in the next few months, we will have Reagan coming in as sort of a dual element bruiser, really upping the potential of the Ice / game. Ice hasn't really had a 100 cost / unit since Gilgamesh, so this is a really big change for the profile of the Ice element, which, as of late has been more about that long-range missile game. Now, in terms of legacy units to watch out for, well, first and foremost, we're going to start with the heart of the Ice element currently, and that is Velis. I'm not sure that this guy really needed all that much of an upgrade to still have relevance in the game, but he is going to get it anyway. Now, one thing that you will notice right away about Velis's box is he does have that MA2 tag on there. Now, the actual details of that mastery enhancement, that's going to be out of scope for today's video, but I do make a note of it on here as these units are not only going to be getting that Dream Awakening, but they are sort of doubling up and getting that mastery upgrade at the same time. So it is going to be a big power spike for these particular units, and it does give you just a little bit more incentive to actually awaken those units and take advantage of that extra power that they're going to be coming in with. Now, for Velis, the main part of his Transcendence mastery is an additional 300 reduction or 30% of his casting time, which will put him at a 60% base reduction, or an impressive 80% if you do use his speed cast passive. So essentially there you can either opt for near instant casting, or you can finally drop that speed cast passive and be a bit more flexible in his build, maybe bring in his accuracy and defense passive, or maybe even just his magic up passive. On top of that though, Snow Healing, one of his best skills and something that he really loves to use, that skill is getting upgraded now, and it's going to buff the target's agility by 25% for a single turn. And we know Velis, he really loves to spam this skill at any opportunity, so the chances are that he is going to actually be refreshing that buff multiple times in battle. So that one turn buff there is just a little bit deceptive, and I think it's actually going to have quite a bit more uptime than that. Now for this next unit here on the list, I'm personally 100% willing to admit that this could be total hopium for me, on a personal, favorite character that I have from Final Fantasy VII. But when it comes to Barret, when I look at the totality of what he's going to be getting here with his upgrades, not only from the 140 Awakening, but also his Mastery 2. He's also going to be getting a brand new unique weapon that has passives that are just for him. What that all comes down to is that this unit is just overall getting a massive upgrade, and to be honest, he really needed it. But I do think in his 140 form that this unit is going to be usable, he's going to be viable, and I think that he's a unit that you can slot into a missile team and use him as sort of a pseudo tank. Remember, he does have that hate component that he has in his passives that you can use to kind of direct a couple of hits towards him. And you can see within his upgrades here, he is not only getting some increase in his damage, but he is getting some agility as well, which he really needed, and he is getting a big increase into his mitigation and survivability. He's most notably getting some area resist as well as an immortal spirit component added into his steel skin buff. So like I said, I think he can be decent on a missile team, to have a couple of hits directed towards him and actually do pretty decent damage as well from from a long range. Now my last one here on the list, I actually did struggle with this selection just a little bit. I was also considering Gilgamesh in this slot, since I do think that he is also getting a very nice upgrade here at 140. In the end though, I just leaned on a more recent unit in Eliza. She does get a more modest upgrade, but you know, I just believe that she is a better overall unit. She has less overall weaknesses here, you know, as the game stands today. And I think she also has more future potential, as she doesn't even have her Mastery 2 as of yet. So that was sort of my reasoning there on that one. You can see the upgrades here that Eliza's picking up. She's getting more missile res penetration. She's getting some reaction block. And then she's getting a upgrade to one of her passives, which is going to reduce her AP consumption there as well. So some nice quality of life upgrades there for Eliza. I don't think it's going to fundamentally change anything about how she plays. It's just going to make her a little bit better. And, you know, to be honest, she is one of the better ice units today. So there is that. Now, if all you have is Gilgamesh, like I said, I do think his upgrade is pretty good too, and he could be worth investing into, and maybe actually make a decent pairing there with Reagan. Now for low cost ice units, you know, ice from top to bottom I think has some of the better ones in the game. Out of the units who have been awakened thus far in JP though, I have picked Ravi S and Curry here. Now Ravi, of course, we did get her 4 months early back at Christmas. She's already a very nice unit today. She was notably missing some key mitigations though, you know, which I did think kind of held her back just a little bit as a physical bruiser compared to what we've actually seen from her in her 140 form in JP. So I think that Ravi owners out there are going to be very impressed with her in her 140 form. I think that, you know, she's already a very nice damage dealer, and she's just going to get a little bit more tanky there at 140. Now Curry here, he is like a fine wine. He just keeps getting better with age. His dream skill here on first glance, I think that it looks very basic and, you know, like there's not much there. But it is very deceptive, as I think this upgrade does address some of his main problem areas. Now, first of all, he's getting a whopping 25% agility, which actually nets him 12 agility to his total. If you've used Curry before, you know that this is a big problem for him. Even if you slap Odin as an Esper on him, if you slap multiple agility cards, maybe even some cards which have some base agility stat, it's very difficult to get him beyond like 85 to 90 agility. So with this change, you know, he's going to be up in the high 90s, maybe even approaching 100 agility in that same build. And that is going to make him a lot more competitive and frankly a lot more dangerous of a unit. Now his Job 25 buff, Hunter's Distinction, is also going to be getting an enhancement. It's now going to give him 40% missile res penetration, as well as 15 AP returned on when he crits for those 3 turns. So this is simultaneously going to address 2 other problem areas for this unit, which were his lack of damage type penetrations and his AP sustain. So overall, I think these are very nice targeted buffs here for Curry, who, to be honest, already was, you know, hands down one of the best 50 cost units in the game today. All right, guys, so let's talk about water here next. And at this point for the next 4 months, there are no more water units that we know about over on the JP side, although I'm sure it's only a matter of time here before another one comes in. Now here in Global, we did just get 2 consecutive 100 cost water units in Perrine and Amnilus. So if you did pull and invest into those units, that's a no-brainer. You know, you're going to want to get that return on your investment and awaken them up to 140 as soon as they become available. So for that reason, I'm not even going to be considering those 2 units in the list. I think that they just go without saying. So considering that, you know, there are a small handful of older water units that are going to be worth your resources for awakening, and that is going to start today with our boy Astrius. Again, he is one of those units who is getting a double upgrade, and his Mastery 2 is quite good. I really like it. It's going to be a big power spike for him. For the Transcendence upgrade though, he's getting a 15 accuracy bump. He can already be built, you know, hyper accurate today, so this is just going to help him get that up even further. Now along with that, he's getting 15 slash resist. It's going to put him up to 25 innate. The best part of the upgrade though is an enhancement to his cross destruction ability. It's a move that he loves to use on auto already, since it has a pre-damage defense break and it has a pretty nice range on it there as well. That's getting 2 effects added on to it. The first is a 3-turn 40% slash res penetration buff. That alone is going to be huge for him. As we know, he doesn't have any innate slash res penetration today. By the way, he's getting even more on his Mastery 2 there, so his damage potential is going to go up quite substantially. On top of that though, this skill is now going to restore 20 CT on use, so just helps put him up there in the turn order just a little bit more. So between all the upgrades that this guy is getting, I think he's definitely going to be well worth bringing up to 140, and he's going to remain one of the premier water units here into the future. Now, next up on my list is going to be Celis. Of course, I don't think there's any huge surprises here on the list so far. These first two units were pretty much the heart and soul of water for the entirety of 2022. Now, roughly 4 months from now, Final Fantasy VI will be returning here to global. All of those original units that we got at the 2nd year anniversary will be returning to get their second masteries and of course their 140 Transcendence awakenings. Celis here though gets a couple of nice upgrades, which I think will help bring her back a bit, into the meta. Of course, with Fire Magic seeing a big uptick over in JP with both Roy and Kefka now being released, that's going to be all the more reason for us to be using Celis out there again. So with her 140 awakening, Celis is going to be picking up 10 unit resist as well as 20 healing power. So already there, that's pretty nice on its face. She's also getting an upgrade to one of her self buffs, which is her Undefeated General's Pride. That is her hate and self-mitigation buff. Now this one is now going to give her a 30% damage absorbed to her skills for 3 turns. Now Celeste does have her Magic Burst ability. It's a large diamond AoE, so if you can imagine you're able to hit a couple of targets with that, she can feasibly, heal up a decent amount of hit points, with that skill and help keep herself topped off and maybe take another hit or two in battle as a result. Now my last water UR here is going to be Miranda. I think she's actually a very underrated unit. She is viable even today at level 120, especially since her mastery and red mage upgrades have come into the game here more recently. Now with her 140 awakening, she is picking up 20% magic res penetration. She doesn't have any today, so that's going to help her damage potential there just a little bit. She's also getting a reduced casting time that, you can pair along with her speed cast passive or free up that slot there to use something else. Now, most importantly though, one of her main passive abilities is getting an auto heal back added onto it, and that's going to trigger when she hits 50% health. We have seen a lot of these heal back abilities coming into the game over the last 6 to 9 months, but they are always even better on units that do have courage. And Miranda, she does have Immortal Spirit coming in on her Paladin sub-job, so I do think that this is a very nice upgrade here for her survivability. Now, last but not least, we have Zazan here. He is another one that just seems to keep getting better with age. To be honest, I think overall, Gumi has done a pretty nice job, kind of giving you a reason to use some of these lower rarity units, kind of giving them some unique skills and attributes. And when it comes to cost-restricted modes, Zazan here is no exception. He is picking up that innate hate reduction, always going to be nice for auto play. He's getting 30% added onto his HP pool, which in his case is going to be roughly 1,000 more hit points. And then his Job 25 ability, Killer Cross, is picking up an enhancement as well. It's adding a pre-damage Imperil, which will increase the damage that you take from humans by 25%. This is the first time that we've seen an Imperil of this type, so that on its own is super interesting. Do remember that this guy is also N rarity. He's just that 20 cost. His shards you can pick up only for Gil in the various shops, so it's going to be a relatively small, investment to actually awaken him and potentially even completely max him out by reincarnating him many times. So I think it's definitely a unit that everyone out there should consider. Now, I will also put a special mention here for Aerith. I think that she did get some nice upgrades as well, and personally I have always liked her as a unit. I think she's very flexible and has a lot of nice support skills that she brings. Now, if you're a player that doesn't have a go-to support unit like a Resnick or a Velis, but you do have Aerith, I would definitely consider bringing her up to 140. She can definitely slot in and put in some work for you, even in a multi-element team. And by bringing her up to level 140, that's going to increase her hit points and sort of increase her mitigations as well. And, that's going to increase her potential to be able to heal your team and sort of stay alive in battle. Alright guys, so that is going to bring us over to Earth here next, and after having almost nothing going on in the element for the better part of a year, it seems like 2023, everything is coming up Earth. Of course, here in Global, we just recently got Resnick and now Rugia this week. If you did pull and invest in Rugia, just like I said with those water units before, you're definitely going to want to awaken him to 140 and sort of cash in on your investment there. But 2 more 100 cost units, are going to be set to join the Earth element there in Bradley, who is going to be coming in the Full Metal Alchemist collaboration. He's going to be a strong, physical bruiser. He can be built highly accurate as well. And now we do have Dialdo, who is hot off the press in JP, and he has come in as a very bulky sort of frontline tank unit. And he does have the tools to deal with both physical and magical damage, which is a first for the Earth element. So things are definitely looking up. It's looking promising for Earth this year, especially with a big power spike coming in on the lightning element there simultaneously, which kind of gives us even more incentive and more use to be running Earth there as an element. Now, I don't think that Gumi is even done with the Earth element quite yet. I think we are going to be seeing some Dark Espers here for them as well in the short future. So what about some of those older units that you may want to awaken to complement these new units that are coming in? Well, the first one that I have is going to be one of the earliest units that's going to be awakened in this system, and that is going to be none other than Oberon. He is going to be getting a little bit more damage here with that Pierce attack up. He's also getting that 20 initial AP here, which I think maybe can put you in a position where you don't need to necessarily rely on bells, especially if you have some acquired AP up there in your vision cards. His Job 25 ability, Thunder Smite, is also picking up an enhancement. It's going to add a physical barrier break component there onto it as well. Now, if you play Oberon today, you know that those barriers can definitely shut him down, so this is going to be a very nice addition to have in his toolbox. Now, I will say comparatively, amongst all of the units, it's not the most amazing upgrade I've seen, on its own, but I do include Oberon here as an important unit simply because of his flexibility. His buffs and his limit bursts, they do work very nicely in multi-element teams, which in my view makes him a very valuable unit as we move forward and push towards more multi-element teams and sort of mixing, different element groups together through those job-based vision cards, of which there are already several for Pierce-based jobs already today. Now, the next one I'm including here is Queen Macherie, and this is another one that I have here, not necessarily because I think her upgrade is incredible. In fact, I think it's probably closer to average, with what amounts to maybe some quality of life upgrades here for her. And that seems to be sort of par for the course with how they've been treating some of the newer units. They've kind of given them maybe some smaller upgrades in comparison to the older units, which I guess kind of seems fair. Many of these newer ones, they don't have their Mastery 2s quite yet, and that includes Macherie here. I do put her on the list here, though, because I think that she does remain a key unit for the element. She is one of the few magic-based threats that Earth has, and I think that is going to synergize very well with the new unit Dialdo. And of course, with the Earth in Peril that Queen Macherie brings, she does fit nicely into pretty much any Earth team. She does bring that Protect for her allies as well, and that's going to be very useful for your tank. Now for UR units, the last one that I have here is Ketone. Again, not necessarily a massive upgrade here for her. It seems to be kind of a running theme here for Earth. Although, added resistances, I'll say, are always pretty nice to have. Her Debilitator, though, gets a pretty decent upgrade. It's going to add a healing power buff component to it, which is going to increase the potency of the heal back on her Drain Force ability. And of course, just the raw stats and HP that she's going to pick up as part of that Transcendence Awakening is probably the most important part of her upgrade, just because all of that will increase not only her evasion with additional luck, but also increase the potency and damage of her Drain Force with getting that additional HP. So finishing up with Earth, I'll quickly touch on a couple of low-cost options here. First, we have Prince Mont. He is going to pick up some nice resistances, including 10% to all elements, which is actually similar to his UR version, so I do really like that. His Killer Blade skill is also getting a nice enhancement, which is going to convert the damage component into a strong HP absorb attack. So that's going to give him a mid-fight option to sort of increase his sustain and give him a little bit of heal back there in the mid-fight. Now again, this is going to be a unit that's very easy to awaken, and his shards are very accessible. In fact, I think on the launch of the system, Gumi may actually be giving us a bunch of his shards just to sort of try it out and kind of get our feet wet with it. Now with my second unit here, I'm going to be giving a shout out to my man Lorenzo. I think he's a unit that's been kind of a sleeper for some people out there, but at just 50 cost, he is a pretty decent damage dealer. And with his Transcendence upgrade, he's getting a little bit more offensive potential here with a little bit more attack and then also some initial AP. The main part of it, though, is going to be that Dive of Destruction Job 25 ability. That's picking up a very nice upgrade. It's increasing its range potential up to 5, so it's going to make that a little bit easier to use. It does also increase the damage modifier on there 35%, bringing it up to a 220 mod, so just does a little bit more damage and perhaps makes the AI favored a little bit more there in battle there as well. So next up is going to be the Light element. We know about 2 units that are going to be coming in for lights. First, we're going to have Winged Stern, who is going to be coming in right after Full Metal Alchemist. And then we have Sweetheart Miranda, who's going to be coming in maybe a month or so after that. It is going to be yet another 70 cost unit for the light element, who they actually have 3 of them already today. But this one is definitely going to be hitting well above that cost level. But who are we going to be thinking about in the meantime while we wait for those units to come in? Well, starting it off here, we have King Jaden. Somehow they just keep making this guy even better. He's getting some initial AP here, which is actually a pretty big deal for him. He can run into AP issues at times, so just getting this little bit more AP can help him get off another ability there in battle. He is getting just a little bit of survivability here as well with that 10 area resist. And then his Job 25 ability, Golden Magic Shot, is getting a barrier break component added onto it there as well. Now, he did already have that on his Limit Burst and then also from his Black Mage sub with Flare, but this one is just a lot more flexible in that it is an arcing shot and has much longer range to it, so definitely makes him a lot more dangerous there on the battlefield. Now, next up is going to be Supreme Free Unit Lucio. This is going to be a completely free, grindable, 140 Awakening. You can actually reincarnate him completely free all the way up to the max. And that is something that they've actually started to do with all of the free units, and that, I think, is a pretty big deal, especially for free-to-play players who maybe don't have all the resources banked up to be able to reincarnate units, multiple times. Getting access to the full stats that are available, on a unit through reincarnation is going to make a noticeable difference, in their performance. Lucio's getting a lot more than stats here. So through the 140 Awakening, he is getting a 20% reduction in his AP usage, 10 area resist, so that's already pretty good right there. But his Job 25 ability, Radiant Nova, which is his large diamond AoE attack, that's getting upgraded with 2 additional effects on it. That's going to increase his slash res penetration by 40% for 3 turns. And then it's also going to decrease the AP of anybody that you hit by 20, so it makes it a much, much better ability. In my view, this guy is already the best 80 cost unit in the game. And to be honest, I think he's actually better than several of the early 100 cost units as well. So, everybody having access to this unit for free, everybody should upgrade this guy. He is very good and very usable. All right, so my third one on the list here is Warrior of Light. I actually did a whole video on this guy a couple of months back, so I'm not going to talk too much on him here today. But if you do have this guy already, if you do already have him built up, I think that he's going to be well worth, awakening. He's getting more HP here, he's getting more healing power, so that just sort of adds on and double dips with what he got with his Mastery 2. And I think it does make him a pretty decent self-healing tank. He is getting a small upgrade though with one of his skills, his shield ability that he's able to cast on others. That's going to go from a 35% potency up to a 50% damage reduction. Now, light as an element, they just have a lot of nice options. You could easily throw Elena and then Locke from Final Fantasy VI. You could throw them on the list here as well, and I think they are actually going to perform, very well. Personally, though, with where Gumi seems to be kind of taking the profile of the element, they seem to sort of be moving it more towards a bruising and sustained playstyle, so that was kind of my reasoning before choosing these units. If you just happen to like, Locke or Elena, I think that they are definitely going to be viable there as well for Awakening. Alright guys, so moving on, let's talk about low-cost units. And in that department, Light probably has it better than pretty much any other element out there. Marielle already is going to be one of my favorites of the bunch. She gets a ton of use, already today in Limited Guild War. She's a very nice little tank, and, even more so as sort of an anti-dark specialist. She's going to be getting a little bit more mitigation here in her 140 Awakening. She's going to get some area resist on there, which is going to bring her up to 25 innate, which is pretty substantial. She's also getting some crit evade on there as well, which is good. On top of that better mitigation though, she is also getting an upgrade to her main passive ability, Dark Spirit Sanctuary. That is going to add a 5 hate component onto it. She actually already has 5 innate hate already, so that's going to get her up to 10 undispellable hate right out of the box, which is going to actually match what Snow has today. Now, if you actually haven't brought Marielle to 120 already, I'm going to highly recommend that you do so. In my view, she is one of the best low-cost units in the game. Alright guys, finishing us off here for today, my last unit is going to be Sakura. This is another unit that we see come out in cost-restricted play, quite often. Of course, she just recently here on Global got her Mastery 2 ability, and I think that did actually help her out, quite substantially. Her 140 upgrade though is just going to double down, you know, on the exact same areas that her Mastery 2 did. She's picking up another 15 defense here, which brings her up to 40 innately. She is getting even more reduction to her cast time, which she's going to have a 55% cast time reduction right out of the box. That is going to make it relatively easy for her to get to, you know, near instant casting, you know, once you bring in, you know, espers and vision cards and trust stones and the like. Now, lastly, she is getting an upgrade to her Quick Thunder Light skill. Of course, with her Mastery 2, that already did get an enhancement. It brought the Imperil to a pre-damage, you know, greatly enhancing the damage that that skill can do. And in the 140 version, that skill is now getting a conditional 60% modifier added onto it if your targets have either haste or AP restore active on them. Now those two, you know, statuses are things that we see quite often out there on the battlefield. So, you know, in many cases, this skill is now going to be a 245% modifier, and it's going to have that 30%, you know, light and lightning imperil added onto it pre-damage. So that skill is going to have some pretty big damage potential here for Sakura, and as a 70 cost unit, I think she's well worth your resources to awaken. So there it is, guys. That is part 1 of my Transcendence series, giving you my take on the best legacy units to awaken up to level 140, you know, over the next few months as this system comes into global. Now, this topic is something that a lot of people were asking about, so I hope that this series here will be helpful for you guys out there and kind of get an advance on some units that you may want to start saving some shards and maybe start farming them in your hard quests, or maybe picking up from those daily medals. That way, once their awakening comes around, you know, you will be ready to go. Of course, we do still have Mog Shop medals that you can exchange for Mind Spheres. Once the system comes in, you can also trade in for Rainbow Mind Spheres there as well. I think that it might be tempting for some people out there to sort of spend those and sort of cash in to get the 120 Mind Spheres that you might need to awaken some of these units. I'm going to highly recommend that you don't do that though. I think that those are better spent on getting Mind Spheres for limited units, and then those Rainbow Mind Spheres especially, you know, definitely save those for your limited time units. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of today's video, or maybe if you have a unit that you feel strongly about for one of these 4 elements that I didn't touch on today, definitely pop that in as well. If you enjoyed the video today, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.